Good evening, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for the Record, St. Albans today. It's our August show, Wednesday, August 7th, the latest possible show being the first Wednesday of August. Thanks for joining us, and very happy to have guests from St. Albans City and St. Albans Town. Mr. Brendan Deso, the chair of the St. Albans Town Select Board with us, and Martin Manahan, Marty got a serious resume growing by the day. The veteran director of operations and business development for the city, and for a while now, the interim public works director. And again, also chair of Vermont Liquor Lottery Board. Is that the name of that?
Yes.
How's that job been?
It's interesting.
Like monthly meetings?
Monthly meetings, yeah. Yeah, down in Montpelier. The last one we had was just a teleconference, but very interesting. They just merged the lottery with the liquor.
Okay, right.
About a year ago.
Oh, hence the name, right? The name sounded a little funny, but now that you mentioned that, how's that merger gone?
Going well. Yeah. They had a director that had just been appointed to lottery probably 6 months before the merger took place. He left shortly after the merger, so our commissioner, as per the legislation, was going to take over the direction of that department anyway, and so our deputy director Gary Kessler has been running lottery, and I think we're going to appoint him as the permanent deputy director at lottery, and then look for a new deputy director of liquor here in the coming months. So,
really, you guys getting into marijuana at all, or is that not your bailiwick?
I think we're going to. There was talk of that, possibly merging that, but I don't think at this point that's the plan.
Yeah.
So, and we've got the model in place with the liquor, controlled state liquor model that we have, that we could probably do that with cannabis as well. I don't think the legislature, I think they may end up having we may take a piece of it, but the ag department may take a piece of it as well. So.
Yeah. Back to St. Albans City. Again, Public Works, of course, that was, you lost, you had a new director going back a while who didn't last too long. You came in as interim director, and you're now the director. But you have a key person.
We've hired a deputy director, Rob Green. Who retired from the city of Burlington after 30 years of service with them. Yeah. Has been an excellent pickup for us. He brings a wealth of knowledge and has experience in a little bit of every area that we have, that we touch. So we've got a superintendent, Walter Kane, who was appointed superintendent after Brian Burns left, and has done a phenomenal job, has a lot of experience and everything, has a great relationship with the crew. This crew we've held together for almost 2 years now, which hadn't happened in the last 7 years probably. It was a lot of turnover there and everything. So we're in good shape. We've got some good equipment, and so it's just a matter of, we're more of a reactionary department. We obviously are preparing for paving and stuff like that, but when you have water leaks and sewer leaks and shut-offs, and people are doing work in their homes, and you go to shut their water off and the curb stop doesn't work, you end up having to repair a lot of that stuff. So, but nice to have summer weather for a while. You don't have to worry about dealing with something at 20 below for a few more months. Huh? We remind ourselves of that almost every time we dig, that it could be worse. It could be 20 below. So, and as we've talked before on this show a number of times, we obviously talk city-town relations, but it sounds like Public Works Department, Brendan, Marty, it sounds like the two PW departments work well together. Of course, the town's chief is former city PW guy, Mr. Manahan.
Yeah, we were thankful to pick Alan up from the city. He came very well prepared, and it seems like he and Marty work together really well. I mean, if we have a truck go down, they have one for us. If they need guys for a water leak, we supply. Very beneficial relationship. Yeah, Alan and Walter have a great relationship, and I mean, they don't need to go through me. They communicate probably on a daily basis on stuff, and so yeah, those guys in the trenches, it's like the fire department and anything else. You take the politics out of it, and they know what needs to get done, and if you allow them to do their job and provide them the tools to do it, they can usually accomplish that. So interesting time for you, Marty. Again, you certainly have, obviously, former mayor, a very good handle on the city, but Public Works is, I suspect, an area you hadn't given a ton of attention to. I mean, I can only assume last couple of years, talk about just learning a whole lot of new stuff for you. No doubt. It's been an eye-opener. Yeah. It was, I always saw Alan, and Alan did a great job. And
Does Alan still get a call once in a while?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
is that
We
right?
rely on Alan quite a lot, actually. I talk to him probably on a weekly basis,
Really?
and he has a ton of knowledge and institutional knowledge and the history. And if we have trouble finding a line or a shutoff or something, he's usually our first call. Matt Moharan, again, is another guy that is always there and ready to help us and is involved in most water leaks and everything.
Can't be good old institutional knowledge.
He spent, I forget, 15 years in public works. So again, he knows the system and knows the valves and everything.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, it's been an eye opener. But like I said, in previous years when I went home at night and didn't worry about anything, and now you realize, Alan did it for 40 years and it was a 24-hour, 7 days a week job. And he would go on vacation, but he would sit down with the guys before and run them through scenarios. Okay, if this happens, what are you going to do? If this happens, and he prepared the guys, and our core group are guys that he hired, and so we're in good shape. But it's an old system. I was telling Brendan earlier, it's not the leaks. You usually find the leak and detect it and get it exposed and everything. It's getting the valves to shut down. And there's such old valves that sometimes you got to go back 2 or 3 valves within the line to get it to shut down, and you shut down a bigger area than you may necessarily have to, but it's the nature of the business and nature of the system. So,
Brendan, with Public Works in the town, you got some paving going on this summer?
We're paving the industrial park and a couple other areas.
Yeah.
We're working on some stormwater projects that we have grants for. We're also, the most important public works project that we have going right now is its relocation project, relocating it from Georgia Shore up to Brigham Road.
And then the garage is going up. Things are going pretty well.
We've got the cement walls are in, the bollards are in, the stone's been trucked in. Right now that we're looking around the 21st or so for the building kit to land. Once that lands, they're going to put the core and shell up, and then they're going to do the work for the radiant floor once the roof's up. And then they're going to pour the interior slab, because being an 8-inch slab, we want it as weather controlled as possible. So it seemed that since all of the posts that carry all of our red iron for the core and the shell were already in place, we should do that first. So I just can't speak highly enough of everybody at Connor Contracting and our project manager, Matt Young, and everybody at Cross Consulting who's helped us make these decisions. Right now, we received an update a couple nights ago at our select board meeting from our project manager. Everything's on time and on budget as far as we can see. Of course, we have to do some cross-country boring through some wetlands to get to a city sewer line down by the school, over by the pool. So we're working through that. That's going to be a process, but we're pretty confident that we should be able to relocate at least our operations, maybe not our salt shed, since that's a separate project with its own VTrans grant.
Yeah.
We're hoping to relocate the operation sometime this winter.
And construction will go right through winter?
The last project meeting I was at, we looked at maybe moving in sometime around January, February.
Really?
So, but the salt
it's going to
shed.
be a mild winter. So.
Oh,
yeah.
well, I hope so for your sake.
You said that.
No, we're really happy that we're moving along, and we're thankful that the voters approved that. We're finally building a new municipal building, and we hope to steamroll that progress into our new town hall relocation, and its relocation committee, which we just made up Monday night, of the select board, the town clerk, and the town manager. And we're going to have our first meeting in a week or two and start discussing where we want to move our municipal offices.
So that's certainly your big project, or those are your 2 big projects for this year, for 2019, I assume.
Yeah, we've been working a lot the last couple of months to really look at our salaries and renew our manager contract and make sure that there was nobody that's severely underpaid. We made an adjustment with the zoning administrator's salary. We feel more comfortable about her salary now. We're just working to make sure that maybe some mistakes that happened in the past are rectified. That way, when we do move forward on new projects like a town hall relocation, we have nothing really stewing from the past to stymie us. I mean, we've been working really hard to improve our relations with the city, select board to city council, because the employee-to-employee relations from the city and town have always been excellent, from what I can tell, unless the politics bled into a certain department. But we've worked really hard to make sure that Tim and I are doing everything we can to, make these boards realize that, if we can do something to help each other, it's only going to benefit both of us.
And you folks finally did get together a while ago.
Yeah, I think it was July 22nd, and we met at the Maple Run School District boardroom. So it was nice to be in not a neutral ground, but a location that serves us both.
How often do you think? Do you think you'll do regular joint meetings or once in a while, or any schedule?
We agreed that we would meet again, but only if we had a particular agenda item that needed to be discussed. I think the most important direction we got out of that meeting was that the consultant that the town is contracted with to provide information and recommendations on a stormwater utility or another source of stormwater funding should look very closely at the city's utility and see if we can integrate our needs and with the city's needs and run one joint utility to save taxpayers on both sides of the line some serious money. So we're looking forward to begin that work soon. That would be probably my highlight of the joint meeting. We also talked about expanding some of the existing sidewalks on Conger Street, on Fairfield. Just some 140, 150 foot sections that it just doesn't make sense for us to not have concrete in the ground. And the manager, Dominic, and the mayor, they've committed to maintaining those sections of sidewalk in the winter.
I'll have to remember that to call them when they need plowing.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we're just looking at what is a short list of obtainable goals that we can work together on that'll better, our collective community.
I should note, it's a live show, Lisa, if you're watching us live, and love to get phone calls. 528-5315 is our number. Last night was National Night Out, kind of an effort to try to build better rapport between community members and police, law enforcement, a heavy presence by the fire department on Taylor Park. Made the scene, some nice food, looked like a decent crowd last night. Of course, kind of the timing.
The rain.
Yeah, the rain was earlier. Maybe there was
early,
rain later, but yeah, because I went by Taylor Park and so I wonder if these guys are going to hang in there, and they did. I guess they did hang in there. So weather later was better. Kind of ironic timing. So I take in National Night Out, get home, and I'm watching late news, and caught maybe the same film that some other folks saw, the city police incident with the Highgate woman, getting a fair amount of attention. Marty, and again, this was the officer involved. Again, Highgate woman still facing some charges, but was taken into custody by city police. And I guess we're going back some months. I guess this video, did you see the video?
Yeah.
You've seen this.
Yeah.
I guess it just surfaced. I guess the Vermont ACLU had pushed to get it, made public and stuff, which it was. And it turns out, I guess, the city police officer struck whatever. The woman in question, who again is still facing charges, and the officer, or I guess former officer Jason Lawton, I guess was fired subsequent to this. I guess there was a city PD investigation. So again, certainly not the best thing for city PD, obviously.
No, it's too bad. It's certainly not indicative of our department as a whole.
And certainly Chief Gary Taylor certainly made that point big time, and I think the record would seem to back that up.
Yeah, he moves swiftly. I mean, we've got some great officers, and it's ironic because there's another social media post out there about a lady who I think was at Price Chopper somewhere and was just moving into town and had lost her credit card or lost her wallet or something. One of our officers were in there getting dinner and paid for her groceries.
Jumped in and paid for it.
Which is more in keeping with what our officers typically do and are known for. So no, it's and when you have a department, there's 30 officers that are in a constant flux. You're going to unfortunately get a bad one every once in a while. But I applaud the chief's swift action on it, and we'll own it and deal with it. And we've already, I think, the chief has mentioned that he's made changes on any use of force. He's going to be made aware of it immediately now and review it.
And apparently he wasn't, can you get in, apparently he wasn't made aware of this situation, or no senior officers were informed about this or something?
And the two officers, there were three officers involved. Yeah. Two of the officers that were involved are no longer with the department. The other officer is being investigated to see what he should have done. The reality is the individual that is the focus of the investigation was a sergeant. These other two officers were probationary officers. So put yourself in their shoes. Would you, be the first one to stand up? You would like to think you would be, but in reality,
a little tough.
probably
Sounds like
not.
a tough
So,
situation.
but there's been changes in protocol, so hopefully it won't happen again. And he is no longer with the department and probably won't be a police officer again in the state of Vermont. So.
Interesting. How are you doing staffing wise?
I think that right now they're good. They've got we've got 4 or 5 guys that were in Parks Patrol this summer that are going to the academy. I think we had 4 or 5 slots at the academy this year, which is more than we would typically have. So with those, I think we're right about 30 officers. So.
Boy, they're not. I typically read the Milton Independent. I guess Milton is short-staffed, and I think I saw looking even throwing out some pretty good financial state police. Sounds like they've been short for years.
Well, with the St. Albans Police Department's offering for signing bonuses, 100% benefits.
Right.
I mean, you can only throw so much money at this.
And it's a tough job, and these guys,
tough. I mean, it kind of looks back to this incident.
Right.
We all watched the video. We saw what that sergeant was put through before he got to that breaking point.
Mm-hmm. And you don't know what the rest of his shift was.
Right.
And,
you don't know. It's a tough job. You have to be a special person to be able to handle it.
Yeah. When they get a phone call, and we're the only 24/7 law enforcement agency in Franklin County. So when a call comes in another community,
or at least aside from state police.
State police, I don't think is 24/7. I think they end at
typically they're off for.
They end at like 2 or 3, but and they have officers overtime and stuff. But we are
good point.
24/7. And when another call comes in another community or something, and they need an officer there immediately, obviously we're going to respond to that call. And you never know what you're walking into. You look last year. When the officers were responding to the call on Diamond Street, they walked up to the door, knocked on the door, and were shot at. And for the grace of God, neither one of those officers were hit, but Frank McCarty almost got killed within inches, So you think that you're just responding and it's going to be, another day at the office or something, but there's no such thing in that line of work.
Well, like what you said, this incident all over social media. I mean, I'm on it all the time for my business, responding to messages and answering comments, but you see people just get so vindictive to the department. This crowd, this anti-police crowd is targeted St. Albans Police, and it's totally unfair.
Is that right? So they're taking a beating on social media?
They are. Everyone down from the chief to this particular person.
They've made threats, and so those guys are on heightened alert.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense. These guys, I mean, the spirit of National Night Out is getting to learn who your department is and what it stands for.
Getting to know them.
I mean, I don't know the specifics of this incident. And I don't care to know that because it's none of our business as the town. I mean, we're contracted for services. We receive services. It's more your line to be intrigued in that than it is mine. But I will say that I've dealt with almost every cop on that department, and not a single one of them, in my own mind, even Jason Lawton, I would have never thought that he would have done something like that. I mean, we just don't know all the specifics. And to have a group of people on social media, so quote-unquote keyboard warriors, who have never stepped in the shoes of a law enforcement officer, making comments about our police department is something that I find very offensive, because these guys would literally step in front of a bullet if they could to save some innocent person, and then to have them be attacked online and have their character called into question because of the actions of one person who was put through a very difficult situation, that's just so wrong. I mean, and that speaks to more of a national problem. It's not just a St. Albans issue.
No, it's a huge national issue. Then we run into some more 3 mass killings in 8 days. Pretty tough going out there. How that makes me think of Highgate. How's City PD faring with Highgate? Got the 1-year contract, and I know the town, I believe, had some concern about that. Just some concern about City PD maybe being
I don't know.
A little thin.
Yeah, I don't know the intricacies of it. I mean, we talk about it at our department head meetings.
Yeah.
It's I think 8 hours a week that they respond, but they've had success up there. They've
24.
They've dealt with. Is it 24?
I think it's 24.
They've dealt with some issues. I think their biggest issue up there, it seems to be four-wheelers and stuff. And
Sounds like that's why they got the contract in the
right,
first place.
Right.
Well,
And I certainly don't think it's a reflection. We were asked to bid it. I don't think it was a reflection of the current sheriff. I think they were frustrated with the coverage they had been getting and the results they were getting. So, like anything, okay, let's try something different. And I think our guys have had some success up there with that. They don't obviously chase the four-wheelers or anything, but they have ways of getting information and following up on that information, and so which has led to some arrests and stuff. So, and I think their presence up there, not knowing when those hours are going to be, they're various, so it seemed to work. But
Brendan, how are you as a town? And again, I think the town was a little concerned about.
We had some members of our board, no one in particular. I think all of us may have been a little concerned when we first heard the news, but I think the consensus is we're contracted for a service with an entity. As long as we receive the services that we're contracted to receive, it's none of our business what you do beyond that. I mean, as long as we're receiving what we're contracted to receive and what we pay for, I mean, it's the same line as, you're contracted to have your house clean, and then your housekeeper takes on another home up the road. It doesn't matter as long as your house is still being cleaned for the amount of money that you agreed to pay, and the standards are what you've agreed to accept. So, I as the chair, I wish you guys well. I hope that you do well in Highgate. I own a business in Highgate with my grandfather. It's a third-generation family company. I manage a company that owns a subdivision in Highgate that's being built out right now that has dealt with four-wheeler issues. And I can say that I've noticed that particularly in ATV traffic, I mean, I would see four-wheelers fly down pinned up in the air right on Route 78 doing 60 miles an hour as I look out my office window, and I'd shake my head. And I had people in this subdivision calling me because it was a reclaimed sand pit that was used for ATV activity for decades, and folks just don't seem to want to let go of that area. Since the St. Albans Police Department has gotten involved with policing Highgate, I've noticed an immediate impact. So, as a business owner in one community receiving contracted services for police coverage, and as a select board chair and a resident and a taxpayer in another community, I feel like every cent that I'm spending on the St. Albans Police Department, at least out of my own pocket, is well spent. So, I look forward to continuing to see the progress you're making in Highgate as a business owner, and I applaud your efforts and I wish you well. If there's a vacuum to be, if there's a little bit of a need and niche in other communities, I think somebody's got to fill it. And I wish the sheriff just as much luck, because at the end of the day, as long as we're safe, it doesn't really matter, what entity is controlling the coverage, as long as it's good coverage. So.
Marty, downtown St. Albans, again, not much going on as usual. I'm kidding. The big project moving ahead. Some serious demolition in the last week or two. But how are things going?
It's going well. It's on schedule. I mean, it's early, but
running into any unexpected
not really.
issues?
No,
really.
we had the demo of the 3 buildings, and the only thing we've run into so far is, and it's really not an issue. The overhead power lines were going through the project, and so the contractor wanted to try to move those just because of the nature of the hazard with trucks coming in and out. If somebody forgets to lower their truck or something and gets caught on one of those, it'll be a bad situation. So moving forward on that quicker than we probably had planned, but rerouting gas lines and stuff like that. But other than that, right now what they're doing is taking out the urban fill that is considered contaminated soil.
What do you do? That's been an issue before that you had
That
to
we
even
did
get
this.
that out of state or something?
Any downtown has to deal with it. Burlington had to deal with it with all their stuff that they were doing down there. We dealt with it on the hotel project and the parking garage project in the state. We end up we contract with a hauler, and it's the same hauler that did our hotel site, Justin King out of Fairfax. He hauls it to a site in New York. He gets the permits and everything and hauls it over to New York, and then we come in and we replace that with clean fill, and then build up from there. So that'll happen over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then construction will begin with the foundations and pillars and underground power and stuff like that.
Will that go through winter?
Oh, yeah.
They'll work right through winter?
Yep, that they're hoping to. It's September of 2020 is their goal.
About a year down the road. And of course, that'll be the new home of
and it'll be the
College of Vermont.
So the commercial building will be the first, and then they'll move up. The contractor for the commercial building is due construction, and then for the residential units up on Maiden Lane is Snyder. We'll build those two. So
The Champlain Housing Trust.
So Champlain Housing will have one.
Okay.
That's going to be low-income housing, 30 units, and then next to that is going to be market rate housing. That'll be owned by the developer of this entire site.
So there'll be more housing than you had in the first
We had
place?
23 units in the Maiden Lane project, and then there was 3 units in the old Moonshadow building. There was 3 units above the old Needleman building, and there was 2 units in the Green building, 10 Congress. So we'll end up with about, I think roughly about 60 units total. In those 2, there'll be underground parking for those buildings, and then obviously replacing that Maiden Lane property.
And City PD, once CCV does move,
So once
down the
CCV
road,
moves into this building on Main Street, we will start renovations on that building that they're in.
Okay.
And then hopefully get them in, and it's probably about 6 to 8 months once that renovation work begins.
So significant renovations will be in order?
Yeah, they've got to do some secure issues. They've got cameras. They're going to put in another access point, so when a cruiser comes in, that they're not exposed to the public like they are now. They'll come into like a Sally port and stuff like that. So the layout of the building, I think, is pretty consistent with what we are looking for with the department, but there'll be some obvious renovations. So.
And that'll still leave, of course, City Fire Department in its present digs. I mean, you'd love to get them out of there at some point. Would you not?
The apparatus is scheduled to stay there, and I think the manpower, I don't know if that's been decided yet, whether they're going to go up to the new building or whether they'll stay with the apparatus.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think there's an opportunity that if the town is looking to do something on the north end, maybe we do a joint venture up there where we bring our apparatus up to the north end, and then you have their apparatus here, and those guys again work seamlessly together, and so there's an opportunity there, I think. And then at that point, we would sell that building and move on from that.
I seem to be the only person who brings this up once in a while. Merger, nobody. Am I the only person who asks about a possible merger between city and town fire departments? Just getting no discussion. Sounds like the departments work well together. But the M word is not out there?
I think everybody seems to be looking in a different direction in stormwater and recreation assets, and we've decided not to fix something that isn't broken.
Yeah, again, I think those guys work well together. And
I mean, the assistant chief is the same on both departments. Right. That can't be mentioned enough. I mean, how can you have two entities that don't work together when their leadership is almost the same?
Right.
So, I mean, Marty's right. At some point, we should have an outpost on the north end. Whether or not it's the city's apparatus there and the town's apparatus at its current location that's somewhat central.
Does that issue does that get some discussion once in a while, Brendan?
I think, again, we're at the point now where mutual aid's working so well and our leadership jives so well that...
I think it's probably driven more by that leadership. If that leadership said, hey, this is what I think we should do, I think... From our standpoint, we would certainly listen to that.
I mean, they're good departments. They run themselves for the most part, and we're just, as a select board, we're just here looking to help them in their mission.
Right,
and
if
at some point the volunteers came forward and said it makes sense for us to merge with the city, we could end up with a similar situation as we have with police. Maybe the town would be the contractor in that point, providing fire coverage to the city. That's been discussed before, but who knows where that could go. I think there's opportunities in the future to look at public works even. We've got things that we do really well. The city's got things it does really well. And how do we, maybe trade off every once in a while if we can save each other some money? I mean, that's where we have to get to is where are we now and where can we go in the future? And where do we feel comfortable and how can we save money? Because at the end of the day, what are we as municipalities if we're not just big homeowners associations that everybody pays dues into in exchange for services?
Well, and sidewalks was, and I joked, but that's a no-brainer. when you have sidewalk, we've got the equipment in the wintertime, we're out there, we've got 3 guys that's all they do is sidewalk plows and stuff, so going up Congress Street and then turning off into the street and then coming back down doesn't make much sense. If we could go all the way to Hardak and plow that and turn around and come up. You know, I remember when the town had the grant for the to put the sidewalk up the access road, and I think it was on this show that I committed our equipment to the former chair that if they built the sidewalk, we would maintain it up the access road.
And now we've been fighting for 3 years, working with VTrans, trying to get a similar proposal implemented when there was grant funding available for it not that long ago.
And still an unresolved issue.
Oh,
And the
scope
thing
has
is,
been altered. It's
you drive by the complex, like they're putting in the concession, they're building a new concession stand, and speaking of Alan Robtoy, he was heavily involved in that and making sure they got water. He made the deal, he negotiated the deal to get the water from across the street from the project across the street and stuff. But you go drive by there, just on my way up to check on that project, that rail trail or the recreation path up there is loaded with people. Now, if those people had a sidewalk to get there, think of how many more people would take advantage.
We've got kids crossing the street. We've got cut holes in fences that have been utilized for years, areas that look like goat paths. I mean, it makes sense, and we'll probably have to lower the speed limit on that road in order to implement some recreation options. But our pedestrian infrastructure in the town has been a serious topic of discussion at the select board level. We realize that, particularly on Route 7 in that area of the access road, and then on the north end, we are lacking. And it's to the point where it's to the detriment of public safety.
Yeah, when I see people walking on in the town on Route 7 between the city-town line around the Messenger out towards the shopping center,
And
every once in a while I'll see someone pushing a baby carriage, boy, tough, or even biking, pretty tough. And I know there's been meetings on whether there was some potential for walkability issues, but
we did a joint study together. We got a grant to do it. RSG was the firm, and our work together actually was awarded at the state level. We've got a study that gives us various options. They've really got an option in there that makes that end of the town look like Shelburne Road with sidewalks on both sides. I don't know if that's feasible. I don't think it'll look like that in my lifetime. But I think we've got to look at, we have a rail trail that takes people all the way up to Franklin Park West, where we sit right now, and that's not that far from where people are trying to go anyway. That's fairly off the beaten path as far as automobile traffic goes. So we've got to get creative into looking at what we have, where we need to get people, and how we want to get them there. And be cost effective about it. But yeah, that's something that I know our vice chair, Bruce Cheeseman, I think that does everything, might even keep him up at night when he drives Route 7 and sees people walking in the street.
A little scary.
It's, he wants, he and I, we talk a lot about what can we do, and I think we're going to see the board really take that up going into the fall.
Marty, tax increment financing, TIF, pretty big controversy there for a while. It seems to have quieted down, but State Auditor Doug Hoffer not happy with some of the city's practices. I know the city, I guess was it Vermont Economic Progress Council, VEPSI. I guess pretty much, as I'm reading some of that, didn't find much of any fault with the city, but is that quieted down? Was there anything, did Doug Hoffer have any, if he felt he was right that the city had, screwed that up to some extent, did he have any kind of enforcement powers, or is this just his opinion he's throwing out about that?
It's an opinion, and it's a recommendation, I think. Anything that we did, we had reviewed by our attorneys, and VEPSI obviously weighed in on us as well, and that's why we felt comfortable after the audit that we were doing what we were supposed to do. And upon their review, I think it was agreed that was the case. And now
were there some changes that were made?
Well, now I think they're going. The plan is that they would go to the legislature and say, "Hey, we need to clean up some of these gray areas. That this is our interpretation of them. This is the auditor's interpretation. Let's get it so there is no gray area."
And it sounds like with TIP, I know Milton ran into some issues. It sounds like anything but an expert on it. It sounds like there are some legit gray areas with us.
There are, and I
it
think
sounds like the auditor just isn't real
well, and
happy
that's,
with the program to start with.
And there's an argument there, I think, to be made that, he made the suggestion that VEPC had a conflict of interest because they support the TIF. Well, the same could be said that he has been a vocal opponent to TIF. There's been other former legislators that have weighed in and suggested that all this development would have happened without the TIF.
Right.
And that is absolutely, positively false. We spent the last 40 years with no development.
Yeah.
Okay? And then all of a sudden the TIF came on and we had this development. So it's an obvious reason. And she was also suggesting that the education fund was losing money. In reality, they were getting 25% more than they would have ever gotten because this development, again, would have never happened. And in 20 years, they get the 100%. So I think it's been said time and time again by people that have come in and looked at it, that we're the poster child for redevelopment and how things should be done. You look at the unfortunate incident that happened up in Newport. You look at what's going on down in Burlington now.
Drove through Newport about 4 days ago. Yeah, the hole in downtown is still there.
You remember Tony Pomerleau.
Yeah.
He
got to the point with Bill Stenger
pretty
saying,
quickly.
See ya, Bill.
There was a visionary that recognized it. But we've been very careful. Again, we've consulted our attorneys and tried to make sure that we.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not like Dominic just was doing this solo and
exactly.
stuff. I'm sure you consulted with people.
But it's you look at what's happened in downtown St. Albans, and it's I think it's beneficial for the state. It's obviously beneficial for our community, and so.
It's beneficial to the town. So we'll say that. I mean, we joke a lot that the largest developer in the city of St. Albans is the city of St. Albans, but that's a good thing. I mean, you guys have really taken this issue by the reins.
And I think that's any development that you see now in communities that the municipality is taking the lead.
You have to.
And have to step up and say, okay, this is how much confidence we have in our community. We're willing to put our skin in the game and get it done. That's how this project here happened with the corner of Congress and Main. We went out and found tenants. We went out and found a developer. We had a vision for what we wanted to happen there.
Ace Hardware right across the street, pretty much.
Right.
You've got.
Is there any TIF connection with the current project? Is this
there is with some of the remediation and stuff.
Not a huge part of it.
No. So.
And
there's some other funding involved and stuff, but it wouldn't
Doug
have happened.
Hoffer said who knows? Is he still kind of on the city's case? It seems like
he's I think taking it personal, and he so and again, hey, it's above my pay grade, so but it's unfortunate because I think what we did, again, we had a lot of checks and balances in there. I think it got personal. And it seems to continue down that path. So
I suspect Doug Hoffer's not on Dominic Cloud's Christmas card list, or vice versa.
I don't think Dom will be going down to their annual Christmas party this year. So
have you dealt? Do you know Doug Hoffer? Have you dealt with him personally?
I've met him a couple of times at different political functions and stuff, but I don't really know him. Or I knew my wife was related to the former auditor.
Oh, is that right?
And so I know. A lot of they take a lot of heat for.
As in Mr. Salmon?
As in Ed Flanagan.
As in Ed Flanagan, former legislator, auditor. Oh,
right.
Okay.
So, and it's a tough job. Those auditors come in and they do their job, and they're not always, received with open hearts, and so.
Of course, that's the job my old friend Vince Aluzzi. Vince would have loved that job, but of course Hoffer beat him. We're probably going back 6 or 8 years or so.
Vince was a very good friend of my Uncle Francis's.
Right, indeed he was. I don't see Vince. I communicate with him once in a while, but I had great words for Francis, and love the St. Albans Co-op.
Yeah.
Boy, big co-op news recently. I get the sense, talking to some folks, just seemed like the merger with Dairy Farmers of America. It just seemed like the way dairy industry in pretty tough shape these days. Sounded like just kind of made sense to go that way.
Yeah, I think it's optimistic for them. They had a good turnout and they had a good support for the merger.
The vote was certainly decisive, about a third turnout, with 99-9 or something.
Yeah, and I think again, as you look at that board and who it's made
Harold
up of.
Harrigan Jr., of course, the board president these days.
They obviously have a lot invested. Yeah. My Uncle Harold's father was the former chair of that, and obviously my opinion was if these guys think it was okay, it must be okay. They wouldn't be doing something that
Yeah, I think they have a lot of credibility.
right. So, and I think it'll be good for us. It sounds like they plan on putting a lot of money into this plant and stuff. So, we'll work with them, and hopefully that we work well with the co-op now. Leon does a great job, and so that relationship I think will continue.
Still getting with all the revitalization downtown. Do you still get some calls from folks other parts of Vermont about how you pulled off what you did?
Yeah. Dom
once in a while.
Dom seems to have a pretty good connection, obviously, with the city managers group that he belongs to and everything. But we have a whole PowerPoint presentation that he and I did a few times, and Dom has done it several times since then. But we've gone going to Highgate. He's done. They have a big development conference in the fall in Burlington that he's presented at a couple of times with different projects that we've done. So, we get calls. I got a call the other day from the manager in Fairfax on when we leased our land around the reservoir for sugar making, and they were, I guess, interested in doing something similar. So,
well, how you doing after a wet spring? Pretty dry last few months. Is the reservoir, I go by it once in a while, is that down quite a bit
It's
now?
not in bad shape right now. The recent rains have helped it, obviously, but it was getting to the point where you wouldn't think that after the rain we had in the spring of the year that we would be down. But even the lake, you see the lake has dropped quite a bit.
Lake's dropped quite a bit.
In the last few months. So, but no, we're in good shape, and we're fortunate again as a municipality to have two different water sources.
That's pretty nice.
Fairfax is cheaper to run. Obviously, it's a gravity-fed system versus Macquam. But the storm that we had the other night wreaked a little havoc with a couple of our pump stations, and when we lost power, but we survived it. So.
Yeah. Brendan, St. Albans Bay, there was some talk about maybe putting, benches on the M down at the Bay Park, usually about every other day or so. Anything going to happen to the Bay Dock this summer? Or
we're working on it. Alan Masher's working on it. It's his baby right now. He was working really hard on Bay Day the last month. He and his guys, they really threw a lot behind Bay Day. Of course,
the weather wasn't totally cooperative. But,
right, it was a late spring. Then by the time they got ready to be able to do something to clean that dock up, Bay Day activity started.
And of course, the lake was high back then. Of course, still pretty high. They
just put a lot of work into the St. Albans Sunflower Festival, helping man the gates and keep the fields mowed around the sunflowers. That was a real good example of what the city and town can do together. When it wants to. I mean, that Sunflower Festival started with someone with a private land who happened to have people coming to take pictures, and it caught fire. And then the Chamber of Commerce and the mayor and the
St. Albans Mayor Tim Smith was much involved in the Sunflower
Very
Fest.
much so. And, he worked with our guys at the town level.
It was a good city-town venture along with other organizations.
And, we're looking to do it, and what that included was we were going to clean that dock up. We were going to cold patch a couple of sinkholes after we fixed the cause, backfilled with stone. And we were going to, Alan had contacted some people that would be able to come in, and instead of doing a black seal coat, they could do like a green or something that looked a little bit more like a pier. And then we were going to get some cement benches and planters, maybe look at lighting, and then trash receptacles.
So it sounds like this isn't happening this summer, or
we might do some of it. I'm a little. I don't want to overcommit Alan with how much workload that they've got lined up, especially with some stormwater obligations we have to meet for some of the grants we've been so fortunate to have received.
But if not this summer, in the future,
there's a lot of
good
support.
Issue to give attention to.
I think the entire select board's behind it. It was originally a recommendation from our Parks Committee that was formed last year, of which Jessica Frost is the chair, and I'm a member that floats in and out of their meetings. And our vice chair, Bruce Cheeseman, that's been a long-standing dream of his, is to turn that into more of a pier atmosphere and less of a dock. And
kudos to both the city and town. I spend a fair amount of time at parks. I spend in particular the Bay Park, Taylor Park, but the parks are kept in. They're kept in really, really good shape.
Great crews.
City and town do a really good job.
Yeah, we just removed actually the sidewalk in the park on the west side, on Main Street side. It was a kind of a trial system that they were putting in for pervious surface for drainage and stuff, but it broke down and there was a lot of trip hazards in there, and we actually had a lady fall at one of the farmers markets. So last week the crew went in, Walter and his guys went in and pulled it out and had it out before the farmers market on Saturday this last weekend. So, and we'll figure out what we're going to do as in the end with the final design of that park, if we're going to change the walkways or stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Fountain's doing just fine, it looks like.
Fountain is doing well, yeah. They had the Kingman Street Classic. The car show was on Main Street this year, and the overflow went into the park. But the farmers market, you go by on a Saturday, and downtown is pretty.
Market's pretty busy.
Yeah.
In the town, of course, you got the farmers market as we speak.
Night.
As we speak.
Yeah.
Down at the Bay Park with some music thrown in, which is nice.
Got good vendors. We've got good bands. Alan Mashter and his guys do a great job, and it's really complimentary to the city's Saturday market. And we see a lot of people on social media that are thankful to have two options. So it's just a good community effort. And
Brendan, again, I catch sunset about every 2 or 3 nights down at the Bay Park, typically, if I don't have time to get out to Kilcare. The big tubs, big buckets that have been put out. You know what I'm talking about? It's right on the edge of the seawall at the Bay Park, and I was just curious what those are. Just like some huge kind of buckets, for lack of a better word.
we'd have to look. Maybe it's something related to our.
I saw one of the park guys there, and he said, "I guess we're going to put some flowers in there." But these are pretty big things.
Planters,
so
maybe?
Planters, pretty big
have
planters.
to ask Alan. I'm so busy at work lately that we're not having our normal weekly powwows. But yeah, I mean, everything that they do down there is just aimed to make the park better.
Yeah, this park, again, running into the usual. I've seen the no swimming signs
That's
gone up maybe two or three times for a couple days.
Tomorrow at around 11:30, the governor is going to be in town, and around noon he's going to sign, I think it's Act 76, that's the water quality funding bill.
Oh, is that right?
Designates a consistent, clear source for water quality funding from the state.
This today he's also doing a lot of biking and going up to Highgate.
He's coming back Saturday. He's coming back Saturday. He's starting at the hospital. He's riding down to the bay. We'll see him there again.
Then off to Highgate.
Well, he's going to take a ride through Macquam Shore, and they've actually got some help coming in. We're going to temporarily chalk Macquam Shore to have 2 bike paths on either side with 1 traveled lane for cars. And the way it was explained to me is we'll have flaggers, and the governor's going to ride through with that chalked system just to see what we're talking about. And the idea is you've got so much. I drive Macquam Shore every morning on my way to my office, and I see tens of more people than I do cars or farming apparatus. So the idea is drop the speed limit down on Macquam in the town and in Swanton.
Which is 40. It's 40 now.
It's
I know
40.
the Swanton Select Board, they've heard from some on the Swanton side of Macquam folks who are just urging them to make it more walkable, bikeable, safer.
You can't really do it because there's not a lot of real estate there.
There's not a lot of room on the side of the road.
So the thought is, at least from the section, I would say somewhere around maybe after Montang Road in the town, maybe a little further, maybe towards Adirondack Drive or Pike Farm Estates. And I don't know what it looks like, and I'm not saying that the select board has at all even thought about it, but the thought is all the way to Swanton Beach, have 1 traveled way for cars, and have 2 bike lanes, 1 on each side, because you can't get a shoulder in most of that area, you can't put a sidewalk in, there's just no real estate. So it's taking what we have, lowering the speed limit, putting in bike lanes, and then if 2 cars meet each other, they can split as long as there's no pedestrians in the way. But if you have pedestrians on either side and 2 cars, 1 car's got to yield to the other. So the thought is lower the speed limit, implement that system. I think you'll notice that a lot of traffic, like myself in the morning, I might hop on County Road instead, which is probably a better use of our existing roadways. So, I'm going to take a ride through there, or maybe at least look at some pictures of what they do for the governor for a demonstration. But tomorrow in the town, in Bay Park and maybe the Stonehouse, if the weather doesn't cooperate, we will have the governor, Treasurer Pierce, Speaker Johnson, a representative from the EPA, the Secretary of A&R, and Senator Parent on behalf of A&R's board. We're all going to speak about the importance of water quality, and then he's going to sit down and sign that act. And
what time is that?
Interesting.
We're starting at 11:30, and the goal is to have pen to paper by about 11:50.
Speaking of the bay, by the looks of it, Marty, or Brendan, St. Albans Bay Marina, second year for the marina. Looks like they are, I think I'm seeing more boats today.
Seems to
Chuck
be.
having a better year in his partner
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I haven't spoke to Chuck, but it seems to be, we've got a camp in the bay, and it seems to be, there's a lot more boat traffic in there, coming in and out, so.
Well, we're lucky to
I think-
we're lucky to have that.
Yeah,
private
no question.
investment.
I hope he makes it, and I hope he does well, because he and his partner have put a lot of
Well, I suspect
skin in
that-
the game, and they deserve to be rewarded for their investment. But they're willing to take the chance, and I think Chuck does a good job down there between the restaurant and that, and the investment he's made throughout that bay. That I hope he succeeds.
Busy place with the creamy. I know that you folks were very concerned about just traffic down there with the
We've got a lot
creamy stand and stuff. I know I'm down there just about every night. I get the sense people who go down there are now pretty used to the fact that there are a lot of people maybe crossing the road, and I don't see any
We have a
crazy driving,
crosswalk.
but yeah,
We have a crosswalk, but a lot of people were illegally parking next to it, and
Right.
the concern was that somebody would walk out into traffic without having a clear line of sight of oncoming traffic in the roadway.
Yeah.
It's just an unsafe situation, so we asked the police department to begin enforcing our parking regulations, which they did. Of course, every time you enforce something that hasn't been enforced for a little while, you
Yeah.
get pushed back from, everywhere up to the business owner down to, just whoever
of
gets
course
the
you
ticket.
have nearby parking in the Bay Park, but I realize asking some people
Right,
to walk a couple, 3 minutes
Walk along
is
the
really
lake
pushing
is-
it.
Well,
Talk
we-
about a beautiful walk from
Right.
that near. I usually park over on the other side. But anyway.
It's
but
an
a
issue
lot of
that'll
people-
resolve itself over time.
Yeah.
We've made a lot of improvements in the bay with that walking path. Like Marty said,
Use it all
they're
the time.
full. They're full. I mean, even in the middle of winter, we get a foot of snow and it's packed by the end of the day because people are using the path. It's, that's a big focus of what we'd like to talk to the governor about tomorrow is that, we can keep making these private and local government investments in our recreation assets with marinas and walking paths and updating our stone house and relocating our DPW site off of the lake. But unless we start to tackle water quality, areas like that won't really take off like they could. So
Brendan, speaking of the existing Public Works garage, future use of that property, is that getting some attention these days?
well, I had kind of asked our project manager to, give me a heads up when it's about the right time, when he felt that it was the right time to begin discussing that, when he knew what the end date was going to be for that facility. We just got that nod, so it's going to be on an agenda at a future meeting. And
You may have
at least
some,
in
again,
future-
remedial issues there.
If I had my way with it, we'd dredge in front of it and put in another boat launch because the state's boat launch on Hathaway Point is always flowed over
Gets
into our
backed
road.
up. Yeah, busy
Um,
place.
That site there, I wouldn't even hazard to guess what's in there. We had oil barges coming in and out of the bay for decades.
Yeah.
It's not just our use as a town. It's going back to the history of that village center and the Ticonderoga coming down. You had the trolley coming down from the city, and you had oil barges contaminating soil. It's just something that happened. But if I had my way, we would keep maybe whatever we had for decent buildings. That old fire station, that blue building's about ready to fall down on its own. Take that out. Maybe leave the salt shed for
How
some
many
storage.
acres do you have there, do you think?
I'd have to check.
Is it about 4? I think it's about 4. Does that sound about right?
I'd have to check to be
3 or
certain.
4, I
Yeah.
think, something like that.
Plenty of parking and
Well,
stuff if you want to.
I talked to the new marina owner, Chuck. I went in, I saw him, and he seemed to think that it might be a little shallow, but he said he had heard, through the grapevine that other areas are able to dredge if they get the right permits.
Wow.
So it might be something that we work with the state on, trying to get a permit, or maybe, if we build it, they'll take it over and maintain it like they do on Hathaway Point. But we've got to start throwing money into that bay, because if we want an economic resource that results in, tourists staying in the New Hampton Inn on Lake Street, and if we want our shops full, on Main Street, and we want our restaurants doing well in the bay and other areas of the town and city, I mean, we really need to start throwing some money into that.
Marty, speaking of health of downtown, how do you put the health of downtown at this point?
I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think we've got
Obviously, always changes.
a couple of vacancies. We just sold the artist in residence building to them.
to them.
So that's kind of another model that we went in and, that building was sitting there vacant. We went in and renovated it and found a tenant for it and ended up turning it over to the tenant. So at the end of the day, we probably broke even between, we rented it to them for a couple of years and we sold it to them for the appraised value. So But other than that, I think everything, the hotel seems to be doing really well. They renovated the building, the old Burno building.
Right.
Across the street, a couple of businesses on Main Street are going to be moving down to that, the Catalyst and the Red House Bakery,
Oh, yeah.
which I think will be a good move for them and the hotel to have that across. And then that space that they're currently in on Main Street is probably easily fillable, right there next to Twigs and stuff. So if you go by Twigs at night, it's, it's again very vibrant. You've got tables that are going down
tables,
all the way down. Tom Murphy just bought the Bayberry Cottage building
really?
from Jeff Davis, and came to us and asked if he could put additional tables down there. We talked to the businesses in that area, and he agreed to put them out after they closed, and does a good job and fills them up.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to go down through there and see them. So. Probably going to renovate streetscape on Kingman, hopefully next summer.
Oh, yeah.
Summer of 2020. So
Great.
we can get that done. That's, when you look at everything else and then you go down Kingman, it's kind of before and after picture,
Yeah.
but we'll get that done. And but other than that, I think the general consensus is everybody's doing pretty well.
The Solo Fonda site, anything going on there?
We've got a couple of things that we're looking at. Obviously, our focus has been on the Congress and Main project over the last year and a half, but we've got some interest working with one particular developer that is looking for a building, and we think we can maybe place them on that lot strategically, so we wouldn't have to do as much remediation to it. But it's come in handy for us, obviously, with the sidewalk project. They stage all their curbs and gravel there, and then in the wintertime we're able to offload our downtown snow down into the back parking lot. So, but I would expect in the next couple of years we would see something happen there with that property. So.
Yeah. Anybody hearing anything? I'd like to think I'll live long enough to be able to get on the Amtrak Vermonter, walk to the train station from my house and get to Montreal. Hearing anything about that? For a while I was hearing 2019, I just never hear much.
Yeah, I have heard that the last piece, in fact, I was talking with an individual from Genesee, Wyoming on the tracks on Alda Street that we're hoping they'll rebuild this year before school starts.
That'd be nice.
And he said the last piece of that is that they have to upgrade the rail between that's left in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
That there's a section that they have to upgrade, and he said, I believe after that everything else is in place to
really, because
be
the
able
Keys seem to be
that.
putting just building an immigration
For an immigrant, and I think
by
they've
Central Station.
Yeah,
in
I think they've
Montreal.
achieved that. I think somebody said they had found the space and had locked it up. But
So maybe
it would be nice
maybe
if
in
you
my
could
lifetime,
if you could get the train up to Montreal and get another baseball team to
kill
be in
for
the
them.
American League.
My friend the Nighthawk,
there.
who will be on our sister station in a little bit of time, he's given me a Nighthawk guarantee that baseball's back in Montreal. I think within 10 years, he said.
I hope so. I hope he's right.
I hope he's right. I don't
Yeah.
buy that for a second. I hope
Yeah.
he's right, of course, but yeah, that'd be nice.
Because if they were in the American League and you created the rivalry between
Tampa, I
Toronto,
think the key is to
Boston,
get Tampa.
Right.
Get Tampa up there.
Right.
Kill Tampa and get them to Montreal.
and the Yankees, and you'd have a great, to be able to go there and.
Yeah, that'd be nice. We're down to just a minute and a half. Brendan, anything you want to quickly talk about that we haven't touched on?
We're working really hard at the ground level to make sure that the city and town are communicating on every issue that comes up. Marty and I had breakfast yesterday on a couple of small things, a couple big things, couple small things, and I walked out of there feeling like, I have a real partner in Marty and Dominic and Tim, and I don't know that anybody at the town has felt that in a while, and I hope you guys feel the same way about us.
Yeah, I think the level of trust is probably, as long as I've been involved. I had a good relationship with Mitch and could always give him a call and everything, and I think we're back to that point now with, if Brendan sees something come along that he's got a concern with, he can call me or Dom or Tim, and I feel the same way. So,
Of course, the wastewater issue never totally goes away, but I guess I read that the town's not looking for any
Saw
more
that,
litigation against the city at the moment anyway.
Well, our current process is that applicants in the town have to come to the select board first, and this was really me on a whim during approving an allocation request saying, why am I here approving something that I don't have the authority to actually allocate? So I asked the board, is this something we want to litigate? Because I don't. And they said no. I mean, it was pretty clear consensus. We're not suing anybody over water and sewer with this current select board, and I'm happy with that.
Well, on that somewhat optimistic note, we'll end there. But thanks very much to Brendan Deso, the chair of the St. Albans Town Select Board, and Marty Manahan. Marty, thanks for jumping in, the Public Works Director for the city and Director of Business Development, Operations and Business Development. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And again, next show is September 4. Thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for Zach for doing all the hard work. And we'll catch you down the road in about a month or so. Sports show on our sister station in a half hour. See ya.